From the time I was born, I've been surrounded by animals and have had a special bond with them. We always had pets in our home, and my life was better for it. These animals ranged from dogs and cats, rabbits and turtles, just about any little critter you can think of at one time or another. When my dad bought a farm, you could add to that list horses, goats, and other farm animals. They all taught me their own lessons, and they kept my heart open during times when most adults would have shut down, never mind a child. We can all learn from the animals, nature, and other people. We don't have to learn everything ourselves. We have a lot of help out here and inwardly as well. While I would love to share all of the love and wisdom that's been given to me by these dear souls, for now I will share with you a couple more recent stories. And you can let me know as I continue these presentations which ones you are interested in hearing about in the future. If you love animals like I do, you can discover many other beautiful stories in the Animals Are Soul blog at the address below. I'll include it in the description. It's full of many beautiful stories like the ones I'm about to share. We were so excited to pick up our new puppy. She was a few months old, gangly and adorable, in the body that she had yet to grow into. Our family fussed over her and made her feel welcomed. However, her excitement didn't match our own. We discovered she was fearful and anxious about most everything, including walking by a mirror. At first, we thought this was due to her new living situation and being taken from her mother and her siblings. But as time slipped by, we came to realize it was more than that. Her fear was in strong contrast to the name she would later choose for herself. Yes, you heard me right. She chose it. One night, our precious pup had awkwardly climbed into bed with me, and observing her curled at my feet, I reached down to stroke her. At this point in time, my boys and I still hadn't agreed on a name for her. Although we came up with a few, none of them seemed fitting. As I tucked myself under the blanket with this strongly on my mind, I quietly said to our newest family member, "What would you like your name to be?" I can't say that I was expecting an answer, in all honesty, but I'd get one. As I fell asleep and entered my dream worlds, I found myself in a space where I felt an abundance of love. A word began to form one golden letter at a time. Niyah. I woke up and immediately thought, what is that word? I had never heard it before, so I looked it up. The definitions I came across originally, I couldn't find them later when I checked again, was the goddess of peace from one origin, or one who is peaceful. Surprised, I glanced down at our pup sleeping soundly. Niyah? Your name is Niyah? She lifted her head and her eyes open. She gazed at me intently as if she wasn't sure why I was so bewildered. Okay, I agreed. It's a beautiful name to grow into. And she would, with time and a whole lot of love. While she had learned to accept us as her family, she was skittish in the presence of anyone else, including other dogs. In my crusade to help Niyah fulfill her namesake, I had to use every creative tool available to me. We began by taking walks, which turned into bike rides to a nearby park, where owners took their dogs to socialize. She hid behind my legs, trembling every time a dog approached her. No amount of assurance from me could comfort her. Our bike rides became longer. I rode with her following alongside for a few miles, and then, and only then, when she was drained of all her anxious energy, we returned to the park. I had her sit facing me while I lavished her with love and attention. Once I had her in a calm state, the dogs were allowed to approach and sniff her from behind, making sure they did not come into her visual area, but I kept them at a short distance from her face. I noticed she tensed up at the start of this new routine, but I kept petting her and speaking softly to her until she relaxed. As soon as I felt her body loosen up, we would walk away from the dogs and people to give her some relief before riding the bike home. I was hyper aware of her at all times during this process and did my best to respect her by only exposing her in small increments to her fears. Handling this with power may have had devastating results. I knew in my heart only love and the grace of God would do. Each day we would practice this routine. Some days Naya reverted into her timid mode, but I would muster up enough confidence for both of us. I stood firm in front of her and held her gently while the other dogs came to check her out. Many months later, Naya had a breakthrough. We had gone for our usual bike ride, and a dog had come to introduce himself. I got into position, cooing at her while he smelled her. Suddenly, she turned curiously and began to sniff him back. I did my best to contain my joy and not jump up and down and scream, "Eureka!" afraid that I would cause her to revert back into the behavior we had worked so hard to transform. It would still take many more bike rides and walks before Naya became totally comfortable in the presence of dogs and strangers, but she would eventually be victorious over her fears. In the meantime, through her learning experience, I received many of my own lessons. I had to learn how to put my own will aside and allow her to go at her own pace. I couldn't force her to not be afraid, no matter how silly I thought it was. No amount of talking, no matter how soothing it was, could talk her out of it. She had to go through it, but in her own way and in her own time, with as much loving assistance as I could manage in a supportive role. Sometimes it was painful for me to watch, but I had to allow her to have her own process, even though I didn't understand. Only time, love, compassion, and patience could help her. By singing "You," a love song to God, or a high vibrational word, I was able to keep myself in the right frame of mind and hold a loving space for her. Singing "You" helps me to stay balanced in my life and to keep my line with Divine Spirit strong. It sounds like this. You. I gave her the gift of freedom from fear and anxiety. However, the gifts she gave me in return far outnumbered what I had given her. I am grateful to this day for all that she taught me, and still wonder who was teaching who. As Sri Harold Klemp says in his beautiful book of Wisdom on Conquering Fear, page 7, love always overcomes fear. Many years later, we would rescue Titan from an animal shelter. Or maybe he rescued us. I'm never sure which one. Maybe both. We had gone to visit the animals, as we did sometimes, with no real intention of adopting until I laid my eyes on a Rottweiler in the far back. As I approached, he didn't bark at me, but instead came right up to the front of the pen. I asked him to bring me his ball, and then looking around, realized although he had many other toys, he didn't seem to have the one thing I had asked him for, or so I thought. He looked around and then crawled part way under the cot that was put there for him to lie on and retrieved the ball from underneath it and then brought it to me. What a smart dog, I told him. After speaking to my spouse and deciding we would like to take him home with us, the woman in charge pointed to his description. Sorry, he's a red zone dog, meaning they would give him a short while longer before putting him down because he was too aggressive. We gave her our name and number anyway, and I hoped for the best. After all, if you dumped me at a shelter with a bunch of nervous, scared dogs, gave me a food bowl, and then stuck a plastic hand in my face to pull the bowl away, I may have bit it too. I convinced them to retest him, and they agreed because there was an interest. I assured them I had plenty of experience with Rottweilers. I had 2 of them before Titan. She later called to say that he had passed his exam and we could adopt him. One big problem, though. We would be away for a seminar for a weekend out of state. After much debating on our part, we knew it wouldn't be fair to bring him home and then immediately board him. So we reluctantly told them our situation. She told us she would keep our application, but if someone else wanted him, they would have to honor that. We told her we understood and then hoped for the best. If Titan was meant to be ours, he would be there. Nothing and no one can truly take what is meant to be yours. I let Titan know that we would be back for him, but he would have to wait. In the meantime, I would go visit with him over the next few days before we left, reassure him each time that we were going to give him a home. When we came back from the seminar, I immediately called the shelter. The receptionist said, I'm sorry, there's an application for adoption. My heart sank. I was happy for him, but at the same time, sad for us. She added, I can save your name and number. Sometimes they don't go through. They have 3 days to decide. A few days later, I received a phone call. The shelter lady said, well, this dog must be meant to be your dog because he's had 3 holds on him for adoption and none of them went through. If you're still interested, he's yours. Happily, I went to go get him and bring him back to his forever home. Titan has taught us many things over the 5 years we've had him and continues to teach us. What have your animal friends taught you about life and love? Do you have a special story you'd like to share? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what you're interested in. I have lots of stories to share. Thank you for the likes and comments. And also, if you're enjoying my videos, please subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Your support is greatly appreciated.